All right, guys, welcome to AWC episode 10. We're happy to have Coach Sossman with us. Coach Soss was here in Arlington at the beginning, and now he's been coaching for the past 6 or 7 years. So we're happy to get his perspective on how wrestling in Arlington has grown dramatically over the past couple of years. So I think what everybody wants to know is what was wrestling like when this guy was wrestling for the high school.
Okay, so that is let me go on record. That's the longest my hair has ever been, and my mom was not happy about it. Yeah, it was just skate park days. So it
Had to pick the
was,
shirt
man.
out.
Yeah, it was different. And I know you guys have had Cordero and all them on, and so he kind of talked about the earlier days. So one thing I'll add in that I heard that he left out was he mentioned like the makeshift workout equipment. So we're carrying crates full of bricks and old telephone poles that were cut up. So they had like the little ladders on the side, and you would grab those and like put them over your back. And we were running down bleachers, very Vision Quest-esque, if you would.
Oh, wow.
But one thing, but one thing he left out that I thought was interesting was that first entire season, I would have been in 8th grade, so 04, 05, they had to practice in the classroom because there was no mat room, facilities weren't open yet. So yeah, everybody's making do with what they have. People are lifting weights in classrooms. So they would legit go roll a mat out. And these are old mats that they bought from Houston. I mean, like Todd Roten Sr. probably wrestled on these mats.
Great ones, yeah. I remember them.
Yeah, I got my first concussion on that mat.
So
it was very hard. So yeah, they were practicing in classrooms, rolling those mats up after practice. And people would go to that classroom the next day. And that was like the worst classroom to be in. And I still talk to Miss Parham, who's a math teacher. She said that classroom smelled. You could not get rid of the wrestler smell because they were practicing in there so much. So yeah, you're going from a classroom to that next year. My freshman year, we get our first mat. We have a mat room. Facilities are open. So just seeing how it's changed and like all the growth is crazy.
So you're a freshman. So you're part of, I guess, the second team for the school.
Yes, I was the second graduating class. So we started with just freshmen. And I know he told you about how crazy that year was. They wrestled varsity the whole time, took a lot of whoopings.
Yeah.
And then the next year, my freshman year, we fielded, I want to say almost the full team, but it didn't get much better. Still took a lot of lumps, but we were growing. And that was kind of where the culture was the priority, that my first season.
So what are some of the things you remember about jumping in as a freshman, about the culture and how you guys worked on it?
Yeah, so I was one of the few guys, I think we had 2 people on the team that had prior experience. And that was because Bolton had a youth program when I was coming up, because that was all the youth sports I played. I played for Bolton, Ellendale, SYS, because Arlington wasn't a school yet. So we had 2 guys, me and another guy I wrestled in youth with at Bolton on the team. And it was just a lot of inexperience, but we had just like generally like tough guys, kind of like some misfit guys that maybe weren't going to be your football players, your basketball players, but they were just good athletes and they were tough kids that wanted to compete. And Israel did a good job of getting those guys out there. So although we weren't the most technical group, we didn't have a lot of athletes. We did just have guys that wanted to be a part of something and wanted to work hard. And so coming out of middle school, I had a little experience, and it's definitely a big jump because you feel that strength at the next level, like immediately. And I've never been a physical wrestler or a dominant wrestler. But especially as a freshman, you can throw people around at that middle school level and get away with some of the technical, deficits. And then you get to high school and you feel that strength, and they're going to make you pay for it. So that was probably my biggest adjustment, was just the big strength difference. I was 4'11", 100 pounds soaking wet at that point. So, and I ended up wrestling 12 that season because I couldn't get down to 106 because of my body fat. So yeah, just dealing with the strength of wrestling older guys. Some guys are seniors at 112 was the weight class back then, and yeah, it was a big jump for
Okay,
sure.
so you come as a freshman. You got some experience. How did you progress through your senior year? What are some things you worked on?
Yeah, for me in middle school, I was one of those guys, and as a coach now, I see this a lot, and it's very convicting because these are a lot of things that I did when I was growing up. So, and I try and explain to them like, this is a problem. We need to fix this. But that's just being a coach, But so one thing for me was in middle school, I didn't like doing the moves I wasn't successful. You know what I mean? And so the things that were hard that I wasn't getting immediately, that I wasn't having success with, like taking a high crotch and doubling off and driving that down, keeping my hips in, my head up, I didn't have a lot of that prerequisite strength. And so the shot, I was not a big shooter. The only moves I was having success with, and I know you guys deal with this, is I had a half and a head throw, and that's all I really used. Yeah. And so I get to high school, and that was really the big thing for me, was breaking those habits of like, I came in and this is my safety blanket, all I have is this head throw and this half, and I'm going to throw till the cows come home. And Cordero was very frustrated with me that whole first year about, you've got to start getting to your shot. You got to start keeping your hips in on your shot, your head up, staying off your knees when you're riding on top. Just like little things that, any high school wrestler has to perfect if they want to get to that level of being a successful wrestler. So that was my biggest thing growing as a wrestler, was, just finding my identity, because I had things I was good at from middle school. Like I was really good on bottom. I spent a lot of time there in middle school. So I was good on bottom because I had a motor, and I knew if I kept moving, this guy's either going to make a mistake because he's going to get out of position, or I'm going to find a way to wiggle out. So I was good on bottom. I had a head throw, and I had a pretty good half, and I knew how to keep my hips in and my head up on the half. But really, my whole 4 years was just getting that shot down to the point where it's automatic. You can hit it from different setups, different positions, and finding some stuff that I could be dangerous with to set up that half and other pin moves on top. That was probably my biggest thing.
Gotcha. So what was your biggest accomplishment in high school?
For me, my two biggest ones, coming out of middle school, I had never even won a tournament. I think the highest I ever placed was second. And so when I was in high school, I was lucky enough to be a part of the first region championship team. And so that was amazing, because it was guys that, you're working so hard every day, you have that common goal. When we finally won the region championship, just be able to share it with like your brothers and the guys that you worked so hard for or with and for, it was amazing. So that was definitely my first, the one I look at and think about the most often, especially being a coach there now. But then my senior year, we took a big step back as a team, because we graduated 10 out of 14 of our starters. That was the first graduating class leading. And we had amazing leadership. I mean, these are guys that are being asked to be team captains freshmen, and they're your captains for 4 years. You know what I mean? So by the time they were sophomores and juniors, they had the being a captain and being a leader thing down. And so I'm thrust into this leadership position, and I just wasn't ready for it, to be able to lead a team, especially a team of like younger guys that were inexperienced. So we did not have a lot of team success, but I really set my goal at the beginning of that senior year as, I want to be the first region champion in school history. And we had numerous state qualifiers. I mean, I'm looking at the list right now. We had two our first year as a team, or I'm sorry, our second year as a team. We had two guys that made the state tournament. And then after we follow up my junior year with this region championship, we're rolling into individuals like, we're going to win this thing, because we had beaten everybody else in duels. But the thing about that was we were a better dual team than an individual team. So we just didn't have that guy reach the top of the podium. And I came back that next season with the goal of, I'm going to be the first person to be the region championship, to win a region championship in Arlington. And I really just like lived every single day of that senior year thinking about that region championship. And ultimately, that's the goal I had, and that's the goal I achieved. And that's something I'll always be really proud of. To quote Coach Simpson, because we've had a lot of wrestlers in my time coaching that have way surpassed my biggest accomplishments, which is crazy. It's awesome at the same time. But that's one thing he told me when I kind of had this thing of, man, I'm coaching guys that are better than I've ever been, and I'm starting to second guess myself. And he was like, man, anybody can be a region champion, but only one can be the first. And so that's kind of the one thing I hold on to as we have all these young guys trash talking me in the room about, I'm a state medalist, this, state champion, that. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll pave that road for you.
Yeah. So, you asking which division?
Yeah.
There's 3 of them every year in each weight class.
So yeah, that was those two things I'm proud of.
Okay, I think that's great. I think you keep in touch with most of those guys still, don't you?
Oh yeah. So what I was telling y'all earlier is like, I always like to think of myself as like the historian, just because I've been around it for so long. So I actually started a Facebook group. Coach Simpson suggested this because he was really big on family. And obviously we don't have a ton of tradition being a younger school and a younger program. But he was really big on, I want this to be a family, and not just immediate family. I want this to be extended. I want this to be grandparents, parents, alumni, administrators, teachers, local community. So a big part of that outreach for me was keeping the guys that had been in the trenches with me back in the day involved. And so I started a Facebook group that's 100% for alumni. And it's really just like people keeping in touch. The first day I started it, we were rolling laughing because everybody broke out the embarrassing practice pictures. And so it starts out as like we were reliving the glory days, and we're kind of just like going down memory lane. And now it's really just like an update page where I keep them up to date on what the team's doing. And last year, one of the coolest things was we wrestled Central in the first round of the region duels. And obviously that's where Coach Cordero, my high school coach, is coaching. And his assistant coach was one of my teammates on that first region championship team,
Right.
Chandler Duncan. And so during that match, I said something to our school about it, our school publicist, and he said, that's a really cool story. So he came out and he ran like a little story about Israel and how he started the program, and he's coaching up there. And I actually had, I think like 3 or 4 of my teammates from back in the day came over and were watching. So we stay in touch. I've got a lot of friends and good friends from that team. And I see that in these guys today. A lot of them, when they graduate, they might not have been the same class, but they're still really close moving into college or post-secondary. So it's awesome.
That's great. So you take off a couple of years, you come back as a teacher, you started out with Coach Cordero, right?
Yeah, that was my first season.
Okay. And then as Coach Simpson comes in with some big plans. So how do you take all that in when he comes in with lays out his big plan?
Yeah. So I did the one season with Cordero, and it's so funny. Coaches do this all the time, but they're hinting at what they want you to do, but they won't tell you, because then it's not you making that decision. You see what I'm saying? And so Coach Cordero, that whole first year I coached with him, I'm a senior. I have a lot on my plate as far as just trying to get out and graduate. I was president of some organizations in college. And so he's kind of hinting at, do you want to be a teacher? Do you want to be a teacher? Because I was still making up my mind about that. And he said, if so, I need to get you on staff, and we need to start making those moves right now. And I'm 21 at this point, so I'm not thinking that far into the future. And so at the end of the season, he kind of drops the bombshell on us and tells us that he's leaving, which, it was shocking, because I'm sitting here thinking, at that point I had made up my mind that these guys are awesome. I want to come back and I want to coach these guys and I want to make this into a career. So everything was kind of up in the air. And then he calls me and says, are you still thinking about coaching next year? I think I found the guy that's going to get the job. And it's Jonathan Simpson. And so he brings me in, and I'm trying to remember who Jonathan Simpson is, because I knew Cordero said he was at Germantown, but when I thought of Germantown, I thought Coach Brad. He had been there for so long. And so I thought about it. And then the first time I met Coach Simpson was his, I guess, like introductory meeting with the team. And I remembered, oh my goodness, this is the younger guy. He probably would have been like my age when he was coaching at Germantown. This is the younger guy that just screams a lot, looks angry. This guy was my first thought. And so we meet, and I'm just like, he sizes me up. I'm sizing him up. And he's kind of giving me the cold stare. And so I'm really worried about, man, I don't know, is this going to work out? Am I going to like this guy? And I already told myself I was going to do at least one more year, because we had, really talented seniors, and Will Kraft, Nathan Inzer, Andrew Zarshanis. So I was like, I'm going to give it a shot. We'll see. Maybe I'll like him. Maybe I won't. And after his first press conference, I was sold. Talking to the parents.
Yeah.
So everything he said at that first meeting, I was 100% on board, and I was bought in, and I knew that it was going to be the start of a really, really awesome time. So
now,
first.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how do you instill the things you learned as an athlete into your athletes? What are the things that you focus on? You want to impress upon the club or the team?
So I have a lot of things that first year early on. It was really the thing I took to heart was an expression I'd heard from an assistant coach in the NBA at that time, which was a good assistant coach knows when to listen and when to shut up. And so I had certain things early on that I could express to the kids. And really it all just comes back to things that I regretted about my career. And I think that's one thing that I can bring to the table as a younger coach, is I can still relate to these guys and kind of just talk to them about, I remember what this was like. It hadn't been too long. And kind of, these are some of the things that I wish I would have done different. Things like, those extra workouts at night, the idea of being selfless. When I was in high school, one thing that really irked me, again, because I was never a physical wrestler, I was like a slick and quick kind of guy, was my senior year, I was asked to bump up a lot to cover empty weight classes. And I hated that, man, because you're wrestling up that different weight class. It throws everything off as far as how you're going to attack that opponent. But looking at it now, we have guys that when we tell them they're bumping up, it's expected. Whatever the team needs, coach, I got it. And that's so awesome that, things that I preached very early on with Coach Simpson about, like, we need to get back to doing these things. We need to get back to doing these things while also incorporating the things that Coach Simpson was wanting to bring to the table.
Right.
That was the recipe for success.
Great.
So, yeah, it's really a mentality thing. The culture when Cordero was there was what won those championships. I mean, we were tough because we worked our butts off. We had a really gut-wrenching conditioning routine that we did every day for 30 minutes. And it's so bad that to this day I use it whenever we have a wrestler that's like in some sort of disciplinary trouble for something they did at school. I break the old conditioning routine out, and it's grueling, man. It's tough. But that's kind of what I bring to those guys is just conditioning, mental toughness. If you're doing all those things and working your butt off, that's the ultimate equalizer. That's what's great about the sport.
I think some of us want to see that workout routine.
I can send it to you.
I don't know if you've seen Coach Maine, but his kids are pretty tough.
This was actually the first time I'd ever heard of burpees. So this is 2007 was when we first incorporated burpees. We had a guy that graduated from Bolton. He was a state medalist, and he went to UTC as a preferred walk-on. And he came back during his free time and came over to Arlington instead of Bolton, and he brought the UTC workout routine with him. And so we already had our set conditioning routine, but he added, burpees and we did a lot of head fighting drills, which I had a partner that was, man, especially gritty. So he loved getting in there and getting nasty. He'd headbutt me. We'd come out with like scrapes and bruises all over our foreheads. So yeah, man, I can send it to you. It involves a lot of sprinting, push-ups, something called jingle jangles, if you're familiar with what a jingle jangle is.
Yep.
And we did it back here. This is the place that those tears were shed.
Yeah, that's where that's the same place I learned it. I mean, I didn't do it, but I learned it.
Yeah.
So what are some of the biggest things you've learned over the past couple of years coaching high school?
Man, over the past couple of years, really just the amount of work that it takes. And so I ask myself all the time, and I try and be, aware and be honest with myself about, who I am as a human being. And so I think a lot about, would I have been able to make it through some of the practices that we put our guys through? And like I said, we did some really rough stuff, but the way we run our program is very similar to like a college team. And we do that because, we have guys that are going to want to move to the next level, potentially in wrestling college. And even if you don't do that, we want you to come out of our program and go, okay, I'm in boot camp right now. I'm breezing through this. I'm in college and I'm staying up late. I'm working on papers and then I'm going to class the next day. So our practices are so tough and we work so hard that we want your biggest takeaway from this program to be, if I want something in life, it's not going to come easy and I've got to work my butt off to get it. And the work never stops. You can't get complacent. And so that was the big thing I learned early on, especially coming right out of college and kind of having to get back to the grind and learning a completely different level of it. That's the biggest change I've had as a coach.
Yeah. And 5 a.m. workouts.
Like that's another 2-a-days, man. Yeah. So talking to some of our wrestlers that are in college right now, that's the biggest thing they tell me is like, man, this is exactly what we're doing now. Like it's a little bit harder with like our classes and stuff, but like we got them ready is what they tell me. So that's one thing I'm proud of.
That's great. What are so you have your historian documents. So what are some of the other things you wanted to, kind of lay out there for the AWC audience?
Yeah. So I'll touch on the region championship real quick, the team one, because like I said, that was probably my favorite memory. And I know y'all talked to Israel and Pagan about it. So just a few notes from that year. Like I told you, this was Pagan's first year with the team. We had some people coming back and working with us that were college guys. And so our official team motto of the year, there was this old commercial that used to air. I want to say it was Slim Jim maybe, but maybe y'all remember this commercial. It would say like in this deep voice, like hunger, get one, hunger, one. And so that was kind of this running joke that we had as a team about like, okay, we're hungry. We've got to keep the hunger and you're only going to get it if you're hungry. And so we would jokingly say that, but it was also like that quick, okay, yeah, we need to buy back in and focus back up. But as far as like personal notes from that year, one thing that I remember is that was the first year we beat just about everybody in our region. We had never beaten Bartlett. We had never beaten Cordova, which was especially meaningful for Cordero at that time because that was his old program that he had started over there. So we beat Bartlett, Cordova, Collierville, Houston. The Houston and Collierville wins didn't happen until the postseason. They had both beaten us in the regular season.
Okay.
And I remember Israel telling y'all that we had this idea of a lineup based on our weight certifications that we called it the Dream Team. And so it was the idea that I would shift to 25, which would get a good JV wrestler in at 30. And then that would create room for our 40 to come to 35. And we literally shifted our whole lineup down, which you see a lot today, but that was really our first time having the horses in the stable to be able to do that.
Mm.
And so we shift our whole lineup down and we go into that region tournament thinking, oh, we're golden. Like, we know we can beat these guys. We're a whole different animal with this lineup. And we get in, and I've had this experience as a coach and as a wrestler, and we experienced some crazy adversity where two of our guys get very, very sick to the point where the night before the region tournament, they're over a toilet throwing up the whole night. So they come in, we don't even know if they're going to wrestle. We're going to have to fill holes in the lineup, shift around or what. And they come in, and these are both state qualifiers, and they tell us we're going to wrestle. And so we ended up beating Houston for the first time that year off of just some performances that you would never have seen. We had guys that stepped up that beat really good state qualifiers that they had never beaten in their lives. And we beat Houston, and that was in the semifinals. And Coach Cordero gives one of the best pre-match speeches I've ever heard. I won't repeat it on here because it's a family podcast, but I walked out of that locker room ready to die on that mat before I was going to lose. And so we go out there, we're wrestling Collierville, who had beaten us 2 weeks before. And it comes down to the very last match. And we are up by, 6 points. So as long as this last guy doesn't give up 10, we're good. We win. He gets up to 10. And so we're split 36-36, I want to say was the final score. And one of our big selling points that whole year was be aggressive, go out there, be the first guy that scores. And so they went down the criteria list. And so if you're not familiar with that, it's unsportsmanlike conduct is the first one. And then I believe it is pins scored. Then I believe it's techs, majors, and you go all the way down the list to criteria number 7, which is first point score. This guy that gave up the pin scored the first takedown at match. And so they ended up writing about it in the paper. And it was like, that's a movie, man. You know what I mean? To have a guy that he goes out there and you're disappointed, but you want to stand behind your brother. And it's like, but man, this guy, all he had to do was stay off his back. And we never gave up pins that year. That was a big thing for us. But he scored that first takedown. So he ended up cementing the win for us as a team. And it was just such a close win. And I remember we're all sitting over there, like heads bowed, praying, doing whatever you got to do because we're so worried about this result. And Israel comes over and he's got his head down like this. And then he looks up and starts clapping. And that's so he like kind of snuckily broke that out on us. But man, we went nuts. It was something I'll always remember. It's crazy. So that was really my biggest takeaway from that match. That's something I'll always remember. I wrote a paper about it my senior year, and I got an A+. And that might have been because it was a great paper, or because Carl Pfeiffer, local referee, was my English teacher. It could be either one. But yeah, I love that. That was one of my favorite moments as a wrestler, and I'll always remember that.
That sounds pretty special.
Oh yeah, man, it was crazy. It was really awesome.
So you have now you guys are kind of the benchmark or the bar. Guys, you see, from our level, even at the youth level, you see other programs growing and catching up, and everybody's, putting in work, getting wins at the state level, getting state medalists. That's got to be inspiring and all. What do you think about the kind of the state of the market?
Are you talking about just the idea like Memphis wrestling in the whole? Yeah. Man, it's crazy. I think I saw a post that Ivan had made about this where we had a drought where it was 3 years maybe, and this was when I was in college, so I wasn't coaching at this point.
Yeah.
But we had like a 3-4 year postseason drought with no state medalists, that's absurd, man, because there's a lot of good coaches and good athletes out here, and there should never be an excuse to not have a state medalist from this area. But for whatever reason, yeah, we had that drought, and to see how it's progressed. This year, I think we took a step back, but we were still in there with, I think the Middle Tennessee and East Tennessee were right ahead of us. But as far as, the Knoxville and all that, we're right up there as far as a region with every other region in the state. And I think 2 years ago, we had like a record for most state medalists we had ever had. And we had those 3 state champions, 3 state finalists. And then you have Gabe O'Callahan makes the finals. You have Bartlett has a state champion that's a girl last year. So just to see, not only the growth of wrestling in Memphis, but for girls wrestling and everything that comes with that, feeder programs and everything, I was wrestling the same 3 kids in middle school every week. And so I placed third at a lot of those tournaments, but those were empty medals, you know.
Right.
So to see the growth that y'all have at tournaments now and the amount of kids participating, the age levels, the weight classes, it's crazy, man. I never would have thought it would be this big.
Hey, Coach, you speak about the feeder program. That was one of the questions I had for you. How important is the feeder program for Arlington High School?
So the biggest testament to the job that y'all do, and I've got to brag on y'all, man, because y'all make our job so much easier, was like I talked about, my senior year was the first year, actually the only year in team history we have never qualified for the region duals tournament. And that's because we graduated, 10 out of 14 starters. And I think the importance of a youth program, to quote Coach Simpson, is that we don't have to rebuild anymore. We reload. It's a lot easier to eat when the cupboard's full. So yeah, the biggest thing for me is that program got started my senior year. Pagan, who had coached with us my junior year, took a step back and said, I want to focus on building a feeder program for you guys. So he stepped down, and that's when we added Coach Pagan my senior year. And so I remember Pagan telling me, we need some wrestlers to come out to really get these guys involved. And I remember being at Bolton, we had a lot of really good wrestlers that would come in, and I would look up to those guys. And, when you're in middle school and you're looking at a high schooler that looks as big as, Austin Antcliffe or Aaron Moore or Dalton Cockman, you're like, oh my God, this is a grown man. So the feeder program, seeing it come from me going to practices, and the guys I'm looking at are baby Aaron Moore and baby Luke Kearns and, baby Nathan Enzer and everything. It's crazy to see how they have grown. And so for the feeder program, that really is what sets us apart. Is I always knew that this is a sleeping monster as far as the area and the resources and the families out here. But what it was is just getting a feeder program in place to allow us to catch up to these teams that had it before we did, which is where I think you've seen us surpass Germantown, Collierville, the traditional blue bloods in this area. They just had feeder programs, way before we did, and we've leveled the playing field. And so that's a big testament to youth wrestling and specifically to you guys as coaches and y'all's whole staff.
Yeah, and now you've had these small clusters of good athletes come through, good wrestlers come through, and now you have this massive sophomore class they're now upperclassmen.
Yeah.
So what's the goal like now in the next couple of years as you have, and I wish TJ was going to get there when Aiden's in 8th grade, but you had Tremaine and a lot of these younger guys that'll be coming in right after this class. You got some really strong athletes coming in. So what's the plan over the next couple of years?
So I guess I haven't gone on record and said this, but I've talked to Coach Simpson about this a lot, and I've talked to our team about this a lot. But a personal goal for me as a coach is that we're on the precipice of history, and we've been setting personal bests and everything. But my goal was to tell them 20 straight, and by that I mean 10 straight duels, 10 straight individual region titles. And that's kind of been the goal for me. And that's what keeps me hungry as a coach. That's what gets me up early in the morning. That's what gets me on my computer preparing for duels and scouting matchups and things like that, is that I want to be a part of what I would assume would be the only team in this area to ever win 10 straight region, individual, and dual titles. And we have the opportunity to do that. And so right now, that's the big focus I have for these guys. And this year I told them this is going to be the year people are going to be chopping at the bits. We're young. They think we're unproven. We're untested. But those guys aren't unproven. I see them prove it in the weight room and the mat room every day. And so I knew going into this year it wouldn't be easy and people are going to have to step up. But I ride or die with those guys. I know they're going to work hard, and I know they're going to die before they give up bonus points on that mat. And this year we saw them come together where we may not have always been the more talented team, but a lot like my team when I was in high school. We were just going to fight for each other. And I'm so proud of how they just gritted. And so that's what I've been preaching to them is the work doesn't stop and we don't get complacent because we still have goals. So,
yeah. And so you graduate 3, a lot of the other programs graduate 6, 7, 8, 10. 10 certainly realistic. What I can see.
I'm not resting on any laurels over here.
All right. You got to keep getting better, right? There's still a state plaque that's missing in that new trophy case whenever that's opened up.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And then, it's all about small goals too. That's the big goal I have right now, but it's going to be little small goals every day that get you there. Okay, did you set a PR in the weight room today? Did you get 10 clean reps at practice? Maybe you're cementing some muscle memory for a move that you don't have down yet. So it's just the little things that are going to compound to equate into that big success.
Yep. So we got about 6 minutes left. Is there anything else that you wanted to cover with our audience? Any part of your history, or even ask any questions, or Tremaine? You know, I tend to talk too much, and Tremaine just kind of lets me go.
Yeah. Do you have any more questions, Tremaine?
So what is it like handling the teaching job as well as the coaching job? You know, your interaction with students, and you know, how was that for you?
So my very first year, I actually worked at Arlington for 2 years in the study hall. And that was an awesome experience because that was free classroom experience. And while I'm working there, I'm actually going to school online to get my master's, which was a big part of, you know, being able to let me get a teaching job. And so as a teacher, I just kind of had to separate myself with how I acted around the students, obviously being a younger looking guy. And so I'm I'm incognito in the hallway. A lot of times people see me and they're like, oh, that's a student. And so I'm finally to the place now where I can walk around the school and people don't think of me as a student because they recognize me as a teacher. And so the teaching side of it, it definitely made things more complicated because when I was in the study hall, I've got free time for days. So I take attendance, and my rule was you either sleep or study. It's simple. You know, you can work on homework and study hall, or you can sleep, put headphones in, listen to music, just don't be too loud, whatever. But in that time, that was awesome for me as a coach, because one thing, even going back to high school, that I took pride in was being able to look at matchups and find, okay, we bump this guy here, we find this matchup. So I'm in the study hall with all this free time. I've got my homework done, kids are asleep, they're being good. I used that first 2 seasons when we were really trying to get things rolling. I was on track wrestling, oh gosh, like 2 hours a day. I'm looking at every result from across the state. And so when I get into the teaching room and I've got way more responsibilities, I'm planning more, that took away big time from what I was able to do scouting. And so then it became more of a team effort where, okay, Coach Slaughter is going to look at these guys for the guys he coaches. So just managing the time and trying to kind of get used to having teaching responsibilities on top of coaching and the time commitment required with that, that was the biggest adjustment. But as far as working with students, it's awesome because it's just like coaching. And I've been doing that for way longer than being a teacher. And I feel like I was saying, as a younger coach, I do a good job of relating to the kids, just being a little bit younger, but also kind of have like that cheesy dad vibe where, you know, I'll crack like cheesy jokes with my students that are awful, but they laugh, and it's fun, man. So yeah, I enjoy being a teacher.
So if you could impart any knowledge on our youth wrestlers, or anything to inspire or motivate them, what would you say to our guys?
Okay, so
I'm sorry, guys and gals.
yeah, there we go. Yeah. So the biggest thing for me is I know I'm going to catch a lot of flack from you guys about this because I'm a Packers fan, and I know y'all are Cowboys and Eagles. But so Vince Lombardi, one of the first quotes that we hung up in the locker room is preparedness is the ultimate confidence builder. And that was the question that I could never put into a tangible answer for kids, as I'm not confident. How do I build confidence? You prepare your butt off to the point that you've wrestled this match 100 times in your mind. You've scouted the tape. You've worked out hard. If you're prepared, you'll be confident. You'll be successful. And then another thing for me is, like I was telling y'all earlier, one thing that builds mental toughness is generating or simulating adversity. I think Tom Ryan from Ohio State calls it choosing suffering. And Rocky Marciano was also another guy that was big on this. But it's the idea of, if you can find a way to make your life harder, do it. Choose that suffering, because if you choose that suffering and you're putting yourself through that, that's going to make you mentally tough, and that's going to get you accustomed to the grind, and the grind never stops in the real world and in the athletic world. So probably my 2 biggest takeaways.
That's a good one. We're about out of time. Tremaine, do you want to set up a part 2?
Yeah, we could set up a part 2. But yeah, definitely 2 great quotes, and that's something that I kind of and try to instill in my kids. It's like, hey, you know, adversity, you got to learn how to work through adversity and suffer through it, you know. But if you're prepared, ultimately, you know, you're going to find some success. So great words there. But yeah, so we'll yep.
You
I was just, I told some of yours the other day. What?
We'll hit pause right here before it shuts off, and then I'll send another invite out. We'll start a part 2 so we can get through Coach Jermaine's stuff. The mental toughness is a big deal if you got time.
Okay. Yeah, that's fine, man. I'm just sitting at the house right now.
All right.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the bathroom real quick. Y'all send